All right, all right.
Good
Good
morning. How are you?
morning. Oh, I'm doing great. I've got my chai tea. I'm ready to talk cannabis news. How about you, Jeffrey?
I'm ready to go. We stopped the last one. You asked me what celebrity I would buy weed from, and I want to know what celebrity you would buy weed from.
I'm so glad I came up with an answer already. I hadn't thought about it again. It was Elton John.
Oh, nice.
I just feel fully confident that that would be the most flavorful, pungent, aromatic experience
Yeah,
with all the bells and whistles. I don't even
yeah,
know. Every, eighth would come with a pair of sunglasses, something like that.
right. And maybe you'd wake up like at 10 a.m. next to a pool in LA the next day. So that'd be worth it for sure. Uh,
Ah,
so let's talk cannabis news.
let's do it. What's
So
going
I
on in your world?
Well, I saw this article that Boston Beer, which is the maker of Sam Adams, and also PBR, is that right?
Oh, no, I was
No,
making a note that PBR has also come out with
got
a
it.
cannabis-infused seltzer.
Right. So a lot of these beer manufacturers, Constellation Brands, Boston Beer are getting into cannabis beverages, and which makes sense because they're probably afraid that eventually people are going to stop drinking a lot of their product and go to cannabis products. Um, but I was wondering what you think about cannabis beverages today. Do you think they're a big deal? There seems like a lot of them are starting up. You hear a lot about them, particularly Can, which does an amazing job of marketing.
They're
Everybody seems
delicious.
to know about it. What do you think about cannabis beverages?
To be honest, they don't really excite me personally, and
Hmm,
everything that I've read, it is a lagging aspect of the industry, like, sales
hmm,
are not really that impressive in
right.
here nor in Canada, yet all of these major, alcohol companies want to get invested into this, so I'm not really I don't need to drink my weed, I'm a flower girl, but if someone is kinda curious and it is a healthier alternative to alcohol, I could see how this could become more popular if it's more accessible. If can is an option at a bar versus
Hmm,
me needing to go to a dispensary. Um, that's just my
yeah,
take on it.
yeah,
I I don't really know if I see like a burgeoning future for
right.
cannabis beverages, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not thirsty enough. What about you?
I think that's a really good point. The barrier of having to buy it at a dispensary, which also makes it really expensive because of all the regulations. It's also really hard for those dispensaries to devote the shelf space and the refrigerator space and all that inventory to keep something fresh on the shelf, which I
Mhm.
think also really impacts, I think for beverages to work, they have to be reliable in terms of what they do to you. And it may be that inherently no consumable cannabis thing is reliable because of just you have to go through your stomach and everything in your stomach and your bloodstream. So I think that that's the Achilles heel. It's like every time you drink it, something different happens. It takes a long time. It hits you too late. Um,
Right.
that seems like a really big barrier. But I guess if they figure that out, um, you know, I think people drink. So you don't have to make a new behavior. You just have to
Yeah.
substitute it.
And I do know that beer sales are actually going down
Hmm,
across the United States. I don't know if that's relevant to states where cannabis is legal, which would be a really interesting stat to dive into. But
right.
I'm curious if these alcohol companies are thinking, oh, all of our consumers are going to weed when actually they're all just drinking like Trulies or
Right.
White
Or
Claws.
right. Right. I do think that there is some substitution with all different types of substances when you put cannabis into the market legally. Um, Cannabis beverages, the promise is that they're low calorie and there's no hangover and
Right.
you can be social and all that, but I just don't think we're there yet.
Well, for everyone listening at home, let us know. Do you drink your weed? Does that sound good to you? Coffee and coffee or seltzer? Um, so this is what I wanted to talk about today
Okay.
was made relevant to me because a friend just let me know, a
Mm,
lifetime cannabis consumer who is just over the moon about the cannabis industry has very sadly been diagnosed with CHS, which is cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. Do you know
mm.
about this?
A little bit. I read the article that you sent over. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the article was less exciting than the fact that this actually exists, but there's just such a growing population of consumers who I'm hearing about more and more that are having adverse side effects to cannabis. So, CHS is a condition that one develops typically when they have an overstimulated endocannabinoid system. So, it's
Mm,
usually habitual long-term users, daily users who typically use very high potency products, whether it be
okay.
a vapor or flower. And what happens is when people consume cannabis in any form, they experience extreme nausea, even vomiting.
Right.
Those are the general symptoms that people are experiencing, and it's not good. It's obviously not a good look for the industry. And it's unknown where this is coming from. Again, an overstimulated endocannabinoid system, sure. But beyond that, there's really not a lot of explanation for it.
Mm,
Now, some people do think that it could be from pesticides that
mm.
are sprayed on cannabis, that the plant itself does not have something inherently bad for it. It would be chemicals that we are adding to this product, which we have
Interesting.
seen people have allergies from peanuts because of the way modern manufacturing happens. Um, so this is just really, it's really fascinating to me. And I kind of want to bring it out of the closet, the
Yeah.
conversation about like, how do we become more conscious consumers so that this never happens to anyone? That would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sorry to hear about your friend. And I don't I people's medical conditions are it's so personal, and you don't I don't want to make fun of anybody's medical condition. Although kind of when you squint your eyes at this, it kind of seems like people are using so much cannabis that they're throwing up. Like that's basically what it means, right? It's like they're just like the overstimulated endocannabinoid system means like they're just flooded with all of this cannabis, and they use so much that they end up getting sick. That's kind of
Right.
the simple aspect to it. And right.
Well,
And
when you put
so
it like that, Jeffrey.
right. And hyperemesis basically means just like you throw up. So basically it's like you use a lot of cannabis and you throw up. So I don't know. I don't want to be judgmental at all, but maybe there's a limit in terms of how much cannabis you should use, and maybe at a certain point, somebody's body says this is enough. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that rely on it for pain and for for a medical condition. So it's nothing to like sneer at. But the article that you mentioned was just like somebody who ended up using a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, and then they got sick because of it. So maybe it's not mysterious. I don't know. Am I
Potentially
being
not.
unfair?
No, I don't think you're being unfair. I think that's a great point. You know, if weed is making you throw up, don't smoke the weed. But I think it's more from the consumer point of view, people not being educated to the fact that this could possibly happen to them.
Right.
So in the shadows, no
Yeah.
one in the industry wants to let anyone like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no one's ever died from weed. Don't worry about it.
Right. Right. Right.
So it's totally safe. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to admit it might not be totally safe in all of its forms and all of the ways that you want to use
Right.
it all of the time. And just to have that information more accessible for people to be able to make better decisions for their bodies. If you're particularly sensitive to external substances that aren't cannabis, then probably apply that to your relationship with weed.
Yeah.
Um, and then, very interestingly, I actually looked up a study that was published on PubMed. So,
Hmm.
this is supposed to be a very rare condition, very, very rare. No
Yeah.
one worry about it, extremely
Okay.
rare. But this study deduced
Yeah.
based off of the population that they were able to observe most likely 2.7 million Americans would suffer from CHS if they were
If they
using
smoke so
cannabis,
much weed that
if
it
they
made them
smoke so
throw up.
much. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be
I
safe
guess
out there, kids.
I, g- I guess the point is, and just to be clear, we're not saying that people die of this thing. Um,
No.
but
Mm.
I think, yeah, we often in the industry talk about cannabis being so much safer than other substances, which it certainly is. Being a natural substance, it absolutely is. Being really helpful and support people's health in a lot of different ways. But, you know, it's not 100% always great for you, especially in huge quantities for everybody. I guess that's kind of needs to be acknowledged.
There we go. See, now we've come together.
Have we? Okay.
Yeah,
I wonder if
we've
that's
met
going to
in the
be
middle.
controversial. I feel like that could be a little bit controversial among
Yeah.
like cannabis advocates that like, but I think it's kind of common sense.
Another exciting story. This one's
Okay.
good news coming out of Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
The governor of Nevada officially signed AB 341 into law, thereby approving cannabis lounges to be
Mhm.
born into the state of Nevada, into Las Vegas, which sees 40 million visitors per year. So obviously Vegas is positioning itself to be America's top cannabis destination. Move over,
Right.
California.
Right.
Yeah. Would
Wow.
you be inclined to visit Las Vegas? Do you think that would draw more people, more tourists to Vegas to be able to smoke?
Well, I mean, if it's not legal where you live, right? I mean, that's kind of always been Las Vegas's MO. Like you can go there and do things that you can't do back at home, whether it's gamble or,
It's triggers.
carouse. Yeah, exactly. Um, I certainly wouldn't go to Las Vegas unless, I'm being forced to under any circumstances, but that's just me. Um, yeah, I think that would be attractive for people that they can go and they can hang out. Isn't that sort of already the vibe though? I haven't hung around Vegas for many, many years, but if you go to a nightclub in Vegas, are people smoking weed all over the place anyway, or is that harshed on?
Well, if you can believe it, Jeffrey, it's been a long time since I've been to a Las Vegas nightclub as well.
Okay. So we have very little credibility in this conversation.
But there's a lot of different things flying around that city. So whether it was legal or not,
Right.
it was there. I
Yeah.
just think that this is more of the opportunity for businesses to build their purpose from the ground up
Yeah.
around cannabis
Yeah.
to more of a robust degree, to more of like a, you know, attractive Las Vegas,
Sure.
larger than life experiential cannabis lounge
Yeah.
situation. So,
That sounds
um,
cool. That sounds cool.
yeah,
I mean,
it could be.
basically, nightlife it writ large is an experiential thing around alcohol. Basically, that's what the whole industry is. So this would basically give it a different take on it, and probably definitely be a better experience for certainly the people working there. I remember talking to a bouncer at a bar, and this person was basically explaining to me how much better his job is now that people are smoking a lot of weed because they're just less violent, they're less crazy, they're just chiller. So, yeah, a lot of people showing up at a lounge and getting high and just relaxing. That sounds cool. I bet you people will be into that.
Yeah, and then they can go see the next Cirque performance and just be
Yeah, right.
tripping out of their minds on
Yeah,
Vegas style edibles.
sure. Yeah. And people aren't driving generally when they're on the strip, out and be my guess. So it's probably a pretty safe playground to be in. I
Yeah.
wonder if they'll gamble a lot more. Um,
Probably not. A lot more naps.
well, speaking of naps, our stat of the day uh, is about sleep. And when I was at the last company I was at, NorCal Cannabis, we did a big study about why people used cannabis. I was relatively innocent to the whole cannabis world. I didn't know what to expect, but we asked people why they use cannabis. And what was really amazing to me was primarily what people are using cannabis for is for either pain management, sleep, or for anxiety or depression. 86% of people use it for one of those three things. So when you kind of like picture in in my pre-world of being in the cannabis space, like picturing how cannabis is being used, it was always like for fun, for social life. But really, what's happening behind the scenes is the vast majority of people are medicating themselves to deal with some issue that they have. And 61% of folks use cannabis for sleep. And when I think about that, I, realize just how important sleep is and how wonderful that is that people can get that help from cannabis.
Totally. I mean, my mom being one of them, she
Mm,
was using prescriptions to get to sleep. And I have urged her over the years to wean herself off. I send
mm,
her all kinds. Oh, oh no, I don't. Uh, she has tried a myriad of different cannabinoid specific products as well, particularly CBN. She's seen great
interesting.
results with her sleep with CBN. Um, yeah, I think I'm curious if this study shows people use cannabis for some medicinal reason and recreational. Like, where does the relationship begin?
Right.
For me, I am a recreational cannabis user who has found cannabis helps with sleep, helps with pain, etc.
Mm.
So that would be an interesting
Yeah,
deep
it's
dive.
it's definitely like an and for sure.
Mhm.
The number one reason that people cite is to relax, which I think is such an interesting concept because relax kind of bridges those two worlds between I
Mm,
just want to feel okay and chill out. And maybe even there's an aspect of fun to the relax. But then relaxation also leads into I can actually get some rest. And I
mhm,
was actually thinking about this over the weekend because sometimes it's really hard to relax and how healthy it actually is to relax. And so even this concept of people use cannabis to relax, I think also is really health supporting um, because we all really could use a little bit more relaxation in this world. I think that we stress out way too much. At least I do.
totally. Cannabis can absolutely be even just like the ritual component of I'm consuming cannabis in the evening time, and this is my light switch where I
Yeah.
turn off, I dissolve whatever I've been doing for the day and just,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
em- em-
nice.
embody the cannabis plant.
Nice. That's I want some of that for sure.
Do you use cannabis for sleep? Do you use anything to help you
Yeah,
sleep?
yeah, definitely. Particularly as a substitute for alcohol, which
Hmm.
interrupts my sleep. So that as kind of a trade-off between,
Interesting.
3 glasses of wine or a gummy, it definitely helps me have a better next 16 hours of my life. And yeah, definitely supports my sleep. I've been sleeping, knock on wood, I've been sleeping really, really, really well. Um, I think partly because of that.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah, sleep
There
is
we go.
beautiful.
There's our positive ad for cannabis.
So what's our controversy of the week?
Oh, yeah, let's dive
Let's
in.
yeah, because this is getting too,
Too
too
sleepy.
sweet. Yeah, too
Mhm.
sweet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just really hoping that one day we'll really be able to send daggers at each other, but I'm not sure if this is gonna be the one. You wanna serve it up?
No, it's on you, go ahead.
Oh, all right. Well, is the black market a threat to legal cannabis? I do know that in the state of California, the black market does far more business than the legal cannabis
Hmm,
industry. And that's because people who are entering into the legal cannabis space, no matter what state they're in, have to apply for licenses that are not guaranteed. And then there's enormous fees that come with you trying to become, a entrepreneur in the
mm,
space in any
yeah,
capacity. So obviously people are who have already been in the industry for, well before legalization
mm,
are still kind of carrying the torch of the foundation that they laid for legal space, and they're not getting charged any extra fees from the government. So I don't
right,
necessarily um I don't necessarily blame anyone. Obviously, it's a very high risk situation to stay involved in the black market, but I do know that, everyone from farmer to dispensary owner really gets hit with with just having to pay out, pay out, pay out. And
Yeah.
cannabis starts to become, less profitable than people think.
Yeah. And I think even the term black market is sensitive for people. And I think it's a good shorthand, just like we say weed or, and some people are like, don't call it a weed or whatever. But um, yeah, it's tricky because, uh, like you said, there are people that have been in this industry, in this business for a variety of reasons for a long time, and then things changed on them. And it's really hard to survive in that new world if you're like a farmer in Humboldt, like, and all of a sudden you have to track seed to sale and deal with all this stuff. And you're like, I just want to be a grower, that's really, really hard. I'm not sure if the black market is really being fueled by those folks as much as probably bigger money at this point in there. Um, and the consumer also, to some extent, is being hit by all of these taxes and fees too. And that's obviously where the demand is for unregulated products. They're cheaper, you
Right.
know. And if you have your guy who has been supplying you for a while, like, why would you want to switch? I guess ultimately the consumer does get hurt if the product isn't tested, if it has mold, if it has pesticides, if the vape pen is going to hurt you. um i guess
But
i guess the question is, do we think the black market is going to be a long-term impact on the regulated market, like looking ahead 5 years, 10 years? And for me, it seems like eventually the unregulated black market goes away as the prices get more regular and as people get attached to regulated products, because you don't see a black market in alcohol. After prohibition, I'm sure there was for quite a while, but when's the last time you've had moonshine whiskey from you know what I mean? So I think it is a problem. I think it's a pricing problem for cannabis brands now, but I think eventually it fades.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I'm wondering, or I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
people not knowing a guy.
Yeah.
Eventually, all of the guys that
Mhm.
come over with their cannabis products, the black market sellers, players, you know, the average person's not going to know who that
Right.
dealer is.
Right.
The average person who is just looking to dip their toe into cannabis gummies, it's going to be much easier for them to just go to a store. Um,
Yeah.
but I still have a guy too, so
Do you?
here and there when
Right.
I need
Yeah.
it.
Okay. And you prefer your guy to a dispensary sometimes just because he's your buddy, or
I mean, no, to be perfectly honest, I get so much free weed
right?
that I don't necessarily need to go to the dispensary. But when I do, it is overwhelming oftentimes. Like, oh,
Mm.
this was a $40 eighth. I'm paying $65 for that. How did that happen? Let me call my guy. It's 30.
Oh, nice.
But I would say that there's definitely a difference in quality.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even just, packaging and marketing and the whole experience of participating in this new
Yeah.
wave. That's, almost worth paying the 35% sales tax
Yeah.
or whatever we pay here in California.
It's still exciting to walk into a dispensary and be like,
Totally.
wow, this is actually all legal and it's all cool. And I can just go and
Yeah.
talk about it. And that's just, yeah, it's hard to get over that feeling after living in the shadows for so long.
Yeah. Don't get jaded, everyone.
Yeah.
Try
Yeah.
it.
Don't take it for granted. Cool.
Right on. Yeah. Well, everyone, let us know. Where are you getting your weed? Are you going to a dispensary or do you still have a guy?
There we
That's
go.
that's
Give us a
that's the poll
comment.
of the week.
There we go. All right, Brooke. Well, I'll see you next time. Really nice to talk to you.
So beautiful. Yeah, catch up on some sleep for me, Jeffrey, and we'll
Cheers.
talk soon. Bye.